Okay, good morning, YouTube.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Wait,
Good morning.
yeah. We are very happy today to have our account manager here today, Morgan, and I'm Felix from marketing. We are very happy to start this partner webinar week with you. And today we have Positive with us to do a little bit interview and talk about how Odoo can work with you to be the successful retail business in Asia market. So we are going to introduce you, the CTO of Port, our co-partner in APAC countries, Denis. So we will...
Hi, Denis. Are you here?
Yes.
Hello, guys. Yes,
And
I'm here. I can
we
hear you
have
from
Denis.
home with the COVID, obviously.
Okay. Very nice. So our audience will be seeing your camera also on YouTube. So shall we start the interview?
Yeah, if you want to maybe share your screen, Denis, I think you have some slides to show.
So let's do that. Let's share.
Great, we can
Here
see
we
your
are.
screen.
Okay. So again, we introduce the speakers of today's webinar. Yeah, we have Morgan, the account manager of Odoo APAC, and we have Denis, the CTO of Port City. So let me tell you guys how we're going to do this webinar today. So the agenda of today will be we will introduce Port City to you. They will have experience sharing to talk about how businesses in Asia countries to implement Odoo and become a more successful business. And then they will share some case with you that they have implemented before. And then at the end of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask your question in the chat box below, and then we will go through it one by one, because it is our honor to invite Positive Denis to this webinar. If you have any question, it will be the great time for you to ask. So let's start our
great.
interview.
Let's go into the subject. So before introducing Positive, maybe Denis, can you please introduce yourself to other people that are watching this webinar? How did you get to work with Odoo?
So actually, the meeting with Odoo is something that happened along the way since I've been involved in open source and the PostgreSQL community and doing Python for many years. And obviously, since I'd also been delivering ERP solutions for almost 3 decades, I guess that at some point that meeting was bound to happen. And as we all know, Odoo is still a young product, but nevertheless, the technologies that it's using have been around the IT planet for the past 20 years at least.
Great.
It was quite bound to happen, and now today I'm very happy to be working in that sector, because for the first time I'm having the feeling that we have a product which is both powerful and flexible. And which can be customized, and we'll be talking more about it, but is offering a very high level of flexibility. So about myself, as you can see, so I've been managing IT for many different companies in many different countries, including the Asian market, for the past 20 years indeed. And I've been involved in the open source technology, including Linux Debian from the almost genesis in the 1990s when I was still a teenager.
Interesting. Okay, so you basically grow with it. Okay, nice.
Yes, so we are that generation. So we actually took the train when it was still at the station. So we were part of the people that actually. I would talk about a few third-party technologies which are involved and actually interested to be combined with the Odoo along the way. So maybe we should start getting at it, I guess.
Yeah. So you represent. Maybe we could talk about Port Cities. You represent one of the biggest partner in Asia. And actually, Port Cities was rewarded best partner in Asia last year during OXP.
Yep.
Well, congratulations first for that. And then maybe you can tell us a bit more about Port Cities. What are your goal, vision, and your story?
So basically, first, if you look at the scope right now, if you look at where we are located, you'll see that there's more and more green areas on this map here. So the original Port City, the first initial office was actually not far from yours, guys. It was located in Hong Kong. The story started with a small company in '97. And then we started spreading across Asia. Now our biggest and strongest location obviously is Indonesia, which was founded in 2015. Then we moved to Malaysia. Then we've been opening other offices. It's important to note at this point that the offices that we opened actually are not partners, but actually part of the Port Cities network, which is these are our branches. Not partnerships. So these branches that we actually opened are located in Malaysia. We also present in Singapore. We also opened Australia last year and Mexico as well, but we had a large retail project going on. And because we are in multiple countries and because a few of the founders are European, we also have strong links with the European market. We actually have French clients, we have Belgian clients, we have Italian clients, and also because, as you both already know, Odoo is a Belgian product. And so we keep some contact with our roots, obviously. Now, if you look at the size of Port Cities as it is, we are 150 plus people. Working in all countries that you can see on the map right now. We have been doing more than 350 implementations of various sizes, as you would expect. Our team of developers, mostly located in Indonesia, and now we have a second pool of developers actually starting in Vietnam this year. We have a 60 plus, and we've been working with a few large players already on the planet, so you probably know these names if I say.
Yeah, there is. We can see quite big names here.
So if we're talking about retail, obviously you also know who Aeon is. Actually, we actually having a project with them in Japan right now.
Oh, great. Okay.
We also know yes. So, well, because Aeon, it's a large group too, so they're actually on many continents as well. So Happy Fresh, obviously, also for fresh product distribution is something that you might know. Schneider, who actually are referenced in electric components. Toyota, obviously, which we've been following up in a few countries, including Bolivia, with a gold partner for implementation. And Warda, maybe if there are people from Indonesia watching this today, I hope. Hello, compatriots.
Hi guys from Indonesia.
So who wouldn't know about it? So Warda is a bit the equivalent of L'Oreal, which is basically everything that is related with cosmetics. It is a very, very large player in Indonesia, indeed. And it was one of the first large historical customers of Port Cities.
Oh, nice. Okay, interesting. So we can see a lot of different names here, and you have quite a broad experience with 100 of implementation. So what is the common problems you are facing during implementation? Do you have any advices to share with the viewers?
So let's get into it. First, one thing that I think a tremendously high figure is what you read on this slide is that
90%.
You can read that up to 90% of ERP implementations in Southeast Asia fail. So now what I'm saying, 90%, this has nothing to do with Odoo specifically. It could be any sort of ERP that you could be thinking of. Mostly what this figure is telling us is that ERP implementations are a very high level of failure in Southeast Asia. And what I'm trying to do today is give you a little bit of feedback on the difficulties and challenges that we meet along the way to try and share with people who are actually thinking of implementing for a third party or for their own business, for their own company, to try and understand what are the general pitfalls that you can fall into and things that you should take care of before actually moving on to integrating ERP. So this is about sharing experience from past projects and things that I've seen along the way over all these years. So I try to make a synthetic approach of it by giving what I call the markers of a healthy project. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is what I call having solid business consulting. So what I'm trying to point out here is that very often when we are approached by a potential customer and we are called in for pre-sales, very often the feeling is that these people are actually expecting to buy a product. So the way they're looking at it is they're expecting that you buy a product as the solution. That is, okay, I just need to buy a car to drive. But what needs to be understood is that there is a lot more to ERP and Odoo specifically than just being a product. What I'm trying to say here is delivering an Odoo solution actually requires quite strong background and specific expertise on business consulting itself. Why is that? Is because, as everyone knows on this channel, Odoo is pretty versatile. There are a lot of modules. There are a lot of things that can be done with the system. You can deal with sales, with purchasing, you can do warehousing, you can do supply chain, you can do procurement, you can do accounting, advanced financial reporting, you can do assets, you can do multi-company consolidation, you can do production.
You can do everything, yeah. That's the strength of the product.
And on and on and on. I mean, I couldn't state the entire exhaustive list of all the modules that even Odoo themselves have been coming up with, not mentioning the thousands and thousands of modules already created to provide more advanced customization. What I'm trying to say here is that how could you possibly implement all these features if you do not have solid backgrounds, understanding exactly what is at stake behind that, what are the modules, what are the features, what sort of concept you're actually dealing with.
Be familiar with the process of the companies too, I guess. Like understand the business of the companies.
And, specifically in Asia, we'll talk more about it if we get some time, but we've come across a lot of businesses who have very singular ways of doing things, and yet these are their business models. So beyond understanding what the standard process should be, you also must be capable of understanding what should be integrated as is, what should not, what is business specifics, and what sometimes is a good or bad practice, because it is our duty as consultants to actually also give orientation to a project, not just integrate whatever comes our way. Which actually takes me to the next point, which is having solid understanding of accounting. Reason why I'm saying that is because through my entire career, I've always been noticing that it doesn't matter which brand of software or which technology you are implementing, the ones who are successful at it are always the ones who put accounting first. Look at Oracle, first things that come in is accounting. Look at Sage. Yes, guys, sorry to talk about them here, but the first module that comes in is going to be accounting. Look at SAP. First thing that they will recommend you to implement first is accounting. Why? Because every single thing that you're going to do, even if you tell me now that, yes, I only want to do warehousing, well, I got news for you, my friend. If you are doing warehousing, and it means that you're actually dabbing with asset management. It means that you are doing stock evaluation and stock valuation. It means that stock moves are actually doing things in your accounting. Stock moves actually already impacting your P&L without you even knowing it.
So I can think it's a backbone of the... Okay.
Yeah. So obviously, it doesn't matter which module you are going to implement at some point. You need to keep a very strict eye on accounting, because this is where business starts and this is where it ends. Because end of the day, what is being expected of the company owner is actually to deliver proper accounting with financial reports, a decent P&L, thing that makes sense. And this is why ERP was built, to help you integrate these seamlessly and actually help you into generating that data, maintaining it, and making it accurate. Yes, Morgan?
Yeah, no, keep going. I would just think it's interesting.
Okay. So beyond that, obviously, one thing that customers are interested in Odoo should know is that it is very important that customers themselves be involved in the implementation. Why am I saying that? Is that sometimes I see very often that a few customers come our way and they're asking us, just please, just between quotes, implement Odoo. And actually, what we want to tell these people is that we are not here to generate business processes end to end. We're here to collect. We are here to help them integrate their business. We are here to actually collect information, data, and procedures, and actually integrate their own SOP. We are here to provide expertise and contribute in that effort, but this cannot happen the proper way if these people are not strongly involved in the process itself. So getting involved can be done in many different ways. In a few cases, we had company owners actually taking part directly because it was their own company. They set up their own processes. They want to be involved in the process to control the business better. Sometimes they would appoint a dedicated project manager. Sometimes they would implicate people from top management to make sure that every branch and every division would be integrated properly. But nevertheless, in all cases, it has to be a collaboration. It's not just having the Odoo people walking in and getting the job done, because end of the day, the solution we want to deliver has to look like your business. And the only way for us to understand your business is to hear it from you as an owner. I think that's a very important thing.
It is.
Then another thing that from my point of view makes sense too is the budget allocation. I know that there are a lot of companies being attracted with Odoo because there is also a free community edition available on the market. So what I would the community edition is that it is a great tool for development. It is a good opportunity for small companies to actually try to build something when they don't always have the financial resource to do it. But one thing that must be understood is that going to community makes things more complicated in many different ways. First things off, there is a big difference between the corporate edition and the community one. Obviously, the features from the corporate edition are a lot more advanced. If we take accounting, for instance, if you look at the way reporting is built, if you look at all the features that can actually be given to you out of the box by the corporate version, obviously, when community is kind of tough because there are a lot of things that you need to build to actually compete with such a level of efficiency. Definitely. And then another thing is that sometimes, yes, cheapness can be attractive, but what you need to understand is that if you don't have budget to allocate to the making of the solution, then it is also doomed to failure. You know, I've seen in many cases private companies or government subsidiaries actually being involved in Odoo projects, having their own internal resources trying to build something. And unfortunately, in these departments, I saw a very high level of failure because after a few months, sometimes a few years, after quite some substantial amounts of budgets being spent, the result wasn't really there because the team was not strong enough. The knowledge of functional or accounting or business processes was too short. The technical general knowledge of the teams was not good enough. And end of the day, you end up thinking, well, if they had been going for a professional version and hiring a consultant who knew the product from the start, maybe the project wouldn't be here where it is at, which is now in a state of failure. And it's quite a shame because in the end, sometimes management will tell you, well, we had a bad experience with Odoo. And then you kind of ask yourself, so what was the bad experience about exactly? What was wrong with Odoo? And then you kind of realize that in the end, the approach was actually what was wrong, which consisted in thinking that we're going to get everything for a very cheap price and
for free,
our guys just pull it out. And from my point of view, it's really a mistake. I see the amount of efforts that business analysts and developers in our teams spend on a weekly basis, and we are timesheet based in Port City, so I know what I mean when I mean time being spent by experts, and I understand that coming up with the right solution has to come at a certain. So obviously, Yes, if you're asking me now, is Odoo more competitive than other platforms from the pricing point of view? My answer would be definitely yes. I will be talking more about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But an interesting
So,
point though, about the difference between community and enterprise. So
yes.
you wanna focus now on high transaction. You have
So actually, yes, I will come up with three different types of challenges that we came across. So basically, the three big challenges that we see are three different scenarios that I picked for you. The first one is high performance transactions. The second one will be large data volume, all being handled by Odoo, obviously. And the third one, which is what I call corporate level implementations. So,
so these are three different
okay.
cases, three
These are
different
three different
companies.
cases.
Okay,
Yes, yes,
interesting.
absolutely. So, regarding the high performance, I'm picking up GoSand because it's a project that is still fresh on my mind and which I was involved in last year, which went live actually last year.
So for those who
So
don't know who are Gosen, can you maybe introduce them a little bit?
Well, actually, so GoSend basically is, let's call it the transport branch of Gojek Group. So what these people do is they move parcels from one place to another, which is their business is transport. They used to do it on bikes. Now they actually broadening their network, and they will soon be doing it end to end,
So
which means they are
quite huge
becoming a
volume.
real transport platform. Now, what you need to understand is that well, Gojek was very successful with their online solutions, which originally considered in only transporting people, but in moving parcels, sometimes the flow can be very high. So now try and get a picture of what happens when you get up to 200,000 daily orders.
Wow.
How many transactions is that? And obviously, when you read these kinds of figures, you realize that there are a lot of connected users. There is a very high demand. You need to have high performance transactional system because the amount of transactions per second can be very crazy on busy days, which means that you need to port your Odoo to different standards. And we start talking about high availability. We start talking about linked APIs. We start talking about backends dealing with Android. We start talking about Android applications for the workers, for the users. And we talk about some mostly millions of connected users on a daily basis, generating up to thousands of calls per second. Now, of course, if you believe that you are capable of just doing that with Odoo out of the box by connecting it to third-party applications, well, the answer is no, which means at some point that this is not what Odoo was generally designed for. Odoo was designed to be an ERP, to have its own users, but then at some point, you need to have expertise when it comes to integration because you can't expose a transactional Odoo or any other transactional system, by the way, to that kind of stress without building a dedicated architecture.
So what was your
that's
your solution for that kind of very big projects? What?
So there were actually many orientations because Gojek as a group already have their own IT engineers, so they already had systems as well. So there were many things on the table which were actually implemented. One of the first things was actually to design a whole new type of high performance API that could actually take that kind of stress. Other things would be being capable of following statuses real time by connecting with third-party technologies such as Firebase, for example. I guess everyone knows what Firebase is when it comes to Google and smartphone technology. It would also consist in actually following up status of orders and moving on with other technologies like Kafka messaging, for example. Many other things which as of today actually allow them to operate the system and still do it while using Odoo as a backend.
Yeah.
So this is one example of the type of expertise that could be required when we talk about high performance. Now, another different case, another challenge that you could come across would actually be large data volume. So now the customer I'm going to talk about is very Indonesian. It's actually, they are working in the energy sector. So basically, what these people do, what they trade is they sell water to end consumer. End consumer could be just you and me with our own house, with our own water meter. So what happens with a customer like this one is that they basically have hundreds of thousands of customers, and they bill them water on a monthly basis. And if you look at areas like Jakarta, for example, then we're not talking about hundreds of thousands, we're talking about millions accounts receivable. And the thing about it is, I mean, in our country here in Indonesia, it's millions of customers, but these are tiny transactions. It's a small water bill to pay. Like a standard domestic house here in Indonesia would be spending less than 5 or 6 a month in water, but still this needs to be billed and followed up on a monthly basis, which means millions and millions of accounts being opened. So what you see is actually originally is they were using Oracle as a billing system, but Oracle comes with a lot of limitations, starting with a very, very heavy one, which is that Oracle actually bill their customers by account receivable. So now you catch my drift. The more customers you get, the more license you pay.
Obviously,
which is something that wouldn't happen with Odoo at all, obviously.
No,
so
the business model is the same.
What they've been looking at is actually trying to connect the Odoo with the Oracle and start moving the Oracle solution to Odoo. So in that very particular case, now you also need to design high performance mechanisms. Not because you have many users, no you don't. Maybe the people actually using the back office are going to be less than 50 users to handle it all. But in front of them, there are actually millions of customers. And now the new issue that we have here is we have a very large amount of data that needs to be processed on a daily basis for the billing itself. And the account receivable, the account move lines. And that starts involving many things, which are infrastructure, functional design, and technical design. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is one of the reasons why I saw large companies actually failing in implementing Odoo and other technologies is because sometimes they will first design the solution from the functional point of view, and then they will end up realizing that they have performance issues in productions after they went live, which is real too late. Because originally, what they should understand is that performance should be an initial concern. You cannot expect that you are going to print a P&L with 3 million account receivable lines. Because if you try to monitor the number of accounting entries, we're talking about a few 100,000 pages general ledger. It doesn't make sense. You want to generate a PDF with your full accounting, it's going to be 200 megs a piece. It doesn't make sense. So originally what you should be asking yourself is, think about the functional impact of the business on the infrastructure and the technology before you start developing Odoo technology or Odoo specific modules.
Okay. So you try to plan it in advance, how you're gonna scale the system to the use.
Absolutely. Because at that point, you need to understand that infrastructure and functional design have to be considered all together. You can't just ask a developer to make a module and say, all right, now we're going to put that somewhere on a clouded platform, and we're going to peddle 2 million users inside it. It's not going to work.
Yeah, makes sense.
When we're talking large data, obviously, it's not just the initial data that you have in numbers of customers, but it's the amount of transactions that you intend to generate. And obviously, any kind of retail-like business or related with it is concerned with this, because it means that you are going to sell a lot of small amount items to a very wide number of people on a daily basis, and that can become a problem very, very rapidly. I saw projects failing after a few weeks of operational because these were not considered properly. I saw IT managers spending a tremendous amount of money in servers, in hardware, in cloud infrastructure to try and compensate a deficit which originally was from the logic. Integration was not carried out properly.
Okay, interesting.
Now,
and if I may, in your slide you're talking about integration with Oracle.
Yes.
So I guess you maybe have done integration with other softwares. Can you talk
Absolutely.
a bit about
this?
Actually,
this is something I'd like to bring in the next slides, if you allow me. Indeed,
yeah, sure.
So this is what I'm going to talk about, which is the Odoo integrated. So obviously, whenever you're dealing with corporate customers, we can't be assuming that these people scratch. Of course, they're not.
Yeah,
If
they have a lot of.
reached a certain size, it means that they've already been integrated processes and they've been doing it with different IT platforms. Most of them already own a globalized accounting system. They're already doing reconciliation. They're already doing consolidation at a higher level. They're already using systems to handle that transactions. Many of them actually build solutions. In Indonesia here, I see people still running things with Fox Pro. Yes, you heard me well. Fox Pro is still running in Indonesia. Many of them have been running Dynamics, trying to build something internally, but are becoming limited because the technology is falling short once you start approaching large data with Microsoft-based infrastructures, obviously. So they're looking into something different. But when they come to us, what they're going to be telling us is, please, we'd like to implement Odoo for this specific feature.
Yeah.
So this specific feature could be only production or only accounting or only manufacturing. So basically, they're asking us to compose with other technologies. And then in that case, it means that Odoo, as you see, is only going to be one piece of the puzzle. It's going to be inserted between different systems. System 1 and System 2. So System 1 could be Oracle, System 2 could be SAP. We've been developing a lot of modules to actually communicate with other large players because sometimes the scope of the implementation, the requirement from the customer side is only to do it from C to D to E. But as far as A to B is concerned, well, it's already there. All that is corporate policy. A branch manager is going to tell us, listen, we want to use Odoo for procurement, we want to use it for operational, we want to use it for sales, but we are being imposed by our company that everything should be consolidated into SAP. Okay, very well then. So we are building the logic and the flows so that Odoo is capable of being compliant with these third-party technologies. Right now, for other markets, which are already very mature, like Australia and others, there is a lot of requirements regarding dedicated APIs, regarding dedicated EDI, which is basically interfaces of many different kinds for administration, for bank purposes, for customs, for import and export purposes, for GST, for textiles. So yes, obviously we sometimes have to interface with a lot of other systems, and this naturally takes me to the next slide.
So sorry, before switching to the next slide, you were mentioning sometimes companies require Odoo for a very specific scope. From your experience, have you ever seen a company starting to use Odoo for a small scope and then expanding it to other departments of the company, or like from one small perimeter to a bigger use?
So yes, we have, and usually the easiest for us is to get started with the core, which is the accounting, and then start replacing the rest of the vertical softwares they had and integrate them one by one into the Odoo solution. Replace them slowly as you go. But sometimes that scheme, that pattern can actually be handled in a different way. And this is exactly what you see on the slide number 3 I'm showing here, which is here, I'm presenting Wardah. So Wardah are actually handling a very large amount of cosmetic sales on a daily basis. They're also producing it. So basically Wardah here, they are full loop. It means that they are capable of using every single feature that Odoo has to offer out of the box, plus a lot of customizations that are required. But when you're looking at the way that we actually integrate it, well, what you see here first is that when we did the phase 1 integration, what you see on this phase 1 integration is that the initial step was actually to handle the national distribution center. So what I'm trying to say here is that the first integration step we took with them was actually to handle distribution from the national distribution to the regional distribution centers. Then the second phase was to go to the retail and to the point of sales, which ended up generating a very large amount of sales order a day, as you can imagine when you look at the population like Indonesia. Obviously, yes, there's a lot of leverage there. And then you see that when we went to phase 3 actually was about moving all the way back up again and starting with the raw materials and the warehouses and moving into production and factories in phase 4. So
Okay.
this is something that you would have expected to be done from left to right.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
standard ERP implementation would actually imply a logic going from phase 3 to 4 to 1 to 2. But this is not the way we did it. Why? Because these people had already been doing business for many decades in Indonesia. They already had strong systems, and we had to implement as they went, and they had priorities.
Okay.
So we started implementing the most urgent ones and starting from the weak links, and then ending up with the ones which were already integrated properly. But knowing that every time we integrated an extra step of the Odoo solution, obviously, it meant that Odoo was owning more and more data, and it allowed them to do less reconciliation, less Excel worksheet stuff, less data exchange manipulation. And at the end of the day, being more responsive, having better lead times, better exchange of information, and basically becoming more productive.
That's very impressive. Just to have a rough idea of the project, how long did it take to do the implementation, each phase, for example?
So to be honest with you, after working on many continents and with many different companies, these factors can fluctuate a lot. Now, if you're looking at a customer like WADA, obviously there's been this entire scope of project was almost 2 years. But there are many reasons to that. One of the reasons was that you can't just stop a customer who's actually working in production, because they need to run business on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So you need to build in parallel, then you need to switch from one system to the other. You have cut-off periods, you have transition periods, and you need to follow their guidelines, because their guidelines are actually dictated by the business itself. So you have to follow the customer tempo. Now, if your question is about how much time does it take for us to actually integrate the business, it can be very variable. It's not always related with the business scope or size. Sometimes I've come across customers who are very large but had a very simple business and could be implemented in a few weeks.
Okay.
And sometimes I've come around small to average sized customers who are actually had not such a big turnover, but a tremendously complicated business process which required more expertise. So it can be very variable. Also depending on who is allocated in-house on their side, who is capable of helping, whether they actually in-house within the occasion. That expertise, that guidance on the PM side, on the project manager side, also has a lot of weight, because it can actually tell you whether a project is going to be a few weeks or a few months. It really depends.
Okay.
So the best experience we had were in a few Western countries, and where actually a few business owners knew it all inside out and told us, listen guys, you just sit here, listen to me, I'll tell you everything there is to know about it. And analysis was done in a few days. The programming was carried on over a few weeks, and they were actually live and running after less than, was that 5 weeks? Yes, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, it is.
But specifically, when you look at the scope of the customer, actually, we have a success story of that on our port cities. It's a big player too. But we also have counter examples when there is no guidance on the customer side, when there is a lot of politics on the customer side, when sometimes the SOP is not fully mature, then obviously it can get a lot more complicated. And a lot of the time that is spent is actually spent by the customer on the customer side. So that's one thing indeed.
Great. So about these different projects and experiences, I guess our viewers can go to your website, and I'm sure there is references and description of the project you had in the past.
Yes, if you guys want to.
Yes,
Sorry.
Our portfolio is being built as I speak, because we've been developing solutions in many different fields. We've been doing chemicals, we've been doing manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. We've been doing one of the largest jewelry manufacturers on the planet, knowing that these guys do everything, including melting and casting. We've been involved in a lot of projects also on the which actually involve very high levels of customizations, or sometimes just making modules which didn't exist. Example, in general manufacturing, when customer tells you, well, we need an R&D module. Well, there is no R&D module. We have a manufacturing module, but that's not what it is. So you sometimes end up building things which we're just not there out of the box. Although I have to say that as years go by, there is more and more Odoo expertise being kicked in by the principal, by Odoo themselves. And we keep saying that these guys up there with whom we have contact actually have a very keen vision, a very tight vision on what the business is, how it is evolving, and they are making our lives easier on a daily basis by making versions better every single time.
Great to hear.
So for people listening to this, one thing that needs to be understood is that buying the latest Odoo is not just about getting the new widget or the nice tiny feature. It's not like buying the new Microsoft Word where they just modify the template and added a few extra things. No, there's a lot more to it than that. Every single time a new version comes out, there are a lot of things being improved. If you're looking at Odoo 13 on the manufacturing side, what's been done lately on the QC, the way you guys work on work centers, on byproducts, things that were not there, things that we used to code ourselves manually 3 to 4 years back.
It's not available.
They're here, they're already inside the system, and it's really a pleasure to know that there are people actually wondering how can we make standard modules, generic ones, more customizable, more capable of coping up with the daily tasks of our programmers. So we really appreciate that.
Great, that's very nice to hear. Thank you, Denis. If you guys need more information about Portcities, you can visit their website. I think it's portcities.net.
Yeah.
So we're going
a Q&A
for the Q&A now.
Yeah. And about the link for Portcity is in the chat, in the description box below. With the reference and what they're doing.
Yeah, you can actually either check on our website. I think there's odoo.com. I think partners. You can review the profile.
In there.
Yeah,
the link is already in there. So
okay, let's go into the question now.
Yes, let's go through questions.
We have a lot of people. Watching actually.
Now,
nice.
Yeah, we have a lot of people. Let's go through some of the interesting
Thank you, guys.
questions. Yeah, you guys are very active in the chat.
So I saw someone ask about Saudi Arabia, if Portcities could go to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So we've seen on the map here that you have offices in several locations, but as we have seen, it's not because you are on several countries that you cannot go on other countries and implement. I mean, you implement Odoo everywhere.
Absolutely. So it's also one of the things, and I believe that the COVID-19 effect has also grown this talent somehow, because I'm staying in Indonesia right now, which means that we are in solitary confinement and it's going to last. I know that in a few other APAC countries it's already almost done and you guys can start going out a little bit, but as far as we're concerned, it's only beginning here. It's built to last. And what I'm trying to say is we had to entirely review the way we actually work, and we realized that you can do a lot more
remotely,
distantly, and remotely than you would actually expect. Even the sessions of training that our project managers are actually giving right now to customers who actually were planning to go live before COVID, most go lives have actually been maintained, because the customers said, well, we had a schedule, we like to stick to it, and our staff are not that busy anymore because they don't have customers to serve. So once we use this time to be productive, and we actually followed through, and our project managers have been very ingenious at actually building online tutorials, doing video demos, screenshot captures, improving documentations,
training session,
working on Hangout, and all these tools that we IT guys are so lucky to have, because it's our trade. And the proof being, now I'm probably talking to over 100 people, I believe, and I know they can see me, and
yes.
I'm sitting at home.
That's true. That's very true.
Now, regarding Saudi Arabia more specifically, I believe that this is not just about Saudi Arabia, but any other country, depending on how evolved the ERP project is, who is the PM in charge on location, how decided the management is, how convinced management is with Odoo, then we have to see, because of course for large projects we do move, for pre-sales we do move. You see that we ended up in Latin America dealing with a very large player there because we had to go there. So sometimes, yes, we are required to actually take a trip, and we actually do it because important things cannot all be done over Hangout, unfortunately. But what I'm trying to say is sometimes when people give an accurate description of the requirement, when the project is already ready on the functional side, when the requirements are clear,
you can do it.
It's much easier for us to integrate, and you can do it. Yes.
Great.
We had a few questions sometimes from other partners in Asia who lived in crazy islands where logistics are so complicated. Yeah, so basically, yes, crazy islands, because the customer is asking you to go there and realize that going there is going to take you 3 days of trip.
Oh, wow.
So even in Indonesia right now, I am based in Jakarta, but you need 3 or 4 planes to get into a few areas plus driving.
Okay.
And that's going to take you 2 days to go there. So you kind of tend to tell that, well, before I get there, we better make sure that everything which can be done by its distance is done, because this time, this logistic thing really
you can't miss your shot.
So
yeah.
We have to handle it at the best.
Yeah,
budget-wise.
Definitely.
All right.
So do we have other questions?
Yep. Like questions about accounting module in Odoo community. Although we don't have that in standard Odoo, but I think Port will have other solutions for that. But it's on enterprises.
Localization, yeah. I think more specifically, you can customize accounting depending on the country.
Yeah. So actually, it's one of the things that we're quite strong with. We've been implementing in many different countries with many different fiscal rules. We're dealing with India right now on a project where India is very specific, because basically taxation is also location based for the same company but inside different provinces.
Okay.
So it makes things
a bit more complicated.
Very interesting indeed. But obviously, every single country has very, very strong specifics regarding taxation. We've come across interesting things in Myanmar, where we've been implementing as well. We have knowledge about Vietnam. We have Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore are quite strict about that. We have customers in Philippines with different rules. European customers also are very strong when it comes to tax collection. If you look at countries like France or Belgium, there's a lot of taxation, a lot of different rules, VAT rules, European intercountry exchange. So definitely, as long as
that requires a knowledge,
very clear scope, and the customer is capable of explaining what are the rules and what are the criteria and what are the parameters, we are capable of complying with these. Because if you look at the way the latest versions of Odoo were built, there are a lot of different angles of approach. You can do it from the chart of account point of view, you can do it from journal point of view. The taxation itself can be handled in a negative way, in a positive way. You can handle withholding or not. You can actually do it based on the amount, based on percentage. You can actually also do it based on set of rules. You can actually add taxes to one another. So we already have a lot of flexibility. 90% of the time, only with the functional Odoo itself out of the box, we're already capable of complying. Mm-hmm. If we're not, and if there are other specifics, then we're still capable of developing extra logics to actually tackle your issues. But I've never been in a case that I've seen in my entire life of programming where we had to handle a case which was not doable.
And you have a long life of programming.
Yes, I have a long life of headaches with fiscal rules as well. It comes in pairs, actually.
Great. Let's go to another question. Miroslav was asking, are you making project on fixed budget?
So it's actually one of the things that
you mentioned.
We are capable of doing. as long as, of course, the expectations and the deliverables are very clear. So the way we actually work is we actually do an analysis together. That is the BA, the business analysis in that case would be mandatory because we need to understand all the ins and outs of the business that we want to integrate. We need to know who, how, when, how many, and what is the flow. After we've got the specifics, then we're capable of knowing exactly how much effort we have to put into this on the programming side, on the training side, on the documentation side to just make it happen. So a fixed budget is something that we are capable of doing when the target is very clear.
All right,
Great.
all right.
We have a question, quite interesting question here. A customer, not a customer, sorry, but this one. No, go above. Someone is using different system for their e-commerce business, WordPress, WooCommerce, Excel, Mailchimp, and few others. So Jason is asking if Odoo can replace them all. I think you have actual experience on this.
Yeah, so actually, well, I have quite a lot of affection with a few of them because I've been myself involved in the WordPress community for the past 10 years. So I know these systems very well. Also been involved in the PrestaShop project for over a decade, which is actually a direct competitor with Magento, which I like too, by the way. It's also a nice platform. The way I'm looking at it is, if you'd be asking me, can we replace an e-commerce platform with a system like Odoo? To be honest with you, and with Odoo speaking here, until version 11, I would tell you that I wasn't so sure about it. Starting from version 12, and specifically now with version 13, I see that Odoo have been coming very, very, very strong with e-commerce features. There are a lot more features and functionalities out of the box. It's more and more flexible. They've been improving the front end, the back end, the responsiveness. They've been giving us more tools to customize it in the way that we actually want. So now regarding strategy, it also depends on what you want to do. Sometimes if you're a small business owner, you're already very happy with your WordPress or your Magento solution. I feel like saying, why would you want to change it? Odoo can be a great ERP that you can also install back to back. We also build connectors to move in pair with these solutions. How about keeping your e-commerce on one side and Odoo on the other side for a starter? Then after you're happy
switch
with your Odoo ERP, after your sales orders, your warehousing, your stock moves, your deliveries, your logistics, your billing, your invoicing, your accounting are already into motion, then maybe as a step 2, you can start thinking, well, now, why wouldn't I also use it as my front end? And it would be one unique system. That can be a way of doing it. Because you see, I have experience with small businesses in Indonesia here. The way they actually all start up is always in the same way. First, they need to sell, because you need to get something to actually feed your business, to actually generate account receivable and profit margin.
That makes sense.
And impact your EBIT positively. So they start with a WordPress, they start with a Magento, but these are not ERP systems. They are online e-commerce platforms. So
they need
after
a back end.
certain point, when they reach a certain critical mass, they need to evolve. And then you need to ask yourself, should I just build a connector first and start doing small ERP implementation on the back end only? And then afterwards, why not? If it keeps growing bigger, then you can start off building something global. Yes, it can be done, absolutely. But sometimes it can be a multiple step thing.
All right. We have Ferdinandus asking if you have experience in education institution.
So we actually have a few projects going on. We've been doing a lot of training centers. We have large customers in Indonesia to whom we've been delivering both corporate, that is enterprise, and community editions. He is very welcome to actually send me an email, and I could explain to him what we've been doing and give him a little showcase. These education centers actually were in the business of training third parties, delivering certification, and now they're more interested in actually having more like online training tutorials, online education, and you know that Odoo 13 is also coming with these.
Yeah,
so
learning
there's a lot of
module.
for that right now for self-training, and then we actually have customers in Latin America actually considering launching a whole new platform, Odoo-based, also using phone apps and Android apps to actually deliver training programs.
Great.
So it's working quite well. And the first solutions we started delivering regarding that were actually based on Odoo 10 and on community editions, because on the Indonesian market, the number of connected users was just crazy. And to be honest, and sorry for Odoo, but the number of users was way too high to be capable of affording such a high country license.
we get the point. We get your point.
It's going to be a few thousand, so I said, okay, so maybe we can't quote you corporate, I guess.
Okay, all right.
But yes, we have experience on that, yes.
Great.
All right.
Other question? Think further on. I don't get the question.
We have an existing user on Odoo Enterprise, but he would like to know how AI can link with Odoo. That,
Okay, how could we use artificial intelligence on Odoo and interpret their flow?
We've been actually having a few of these projects. Actually, on the Port City side, we actually have an official partner in Singapore with whom we actually work on AI as well. So now, talking about AI, you can do pretty much anything you want. So the good news about Odoo with AI is that first, because it's fully open, it's using PostgreSQL, we're capable of sniffing data at every single level. We're capable of actually generating patterns and routings to do data analysis, to do advanced automation. It can be sales-based. It can be customer behavior-based. It can be product sales. It can be related with the product moves. It can be related with market analysis. We had many different requirements from different customers regarding that. Sometimes the AI can be built externally with third-party platforms who are capable of crunching a tremendous amount of data and in a very short time. Sometimes it's lighter and it's about building automation with the Odoo bot itself internally and actually deliver automation as well. The Odoo bot's been something that's been improved a lot by Odoo as well, which means it actually becomes an extra worker given to you by Odoo to generate whatever task you want. So it used to be only a small thing to run scheduled tasks, but now you can plug a lot more to it than just scheduled tasks, and you can almost turn it into an AI indeed. So there are different levels of integration, of course, but because the Odoo environment is very open, with a scheduled task, with the Python workers, and with PostgreSQL, you can basically insert it at many different levels depending on what it is that you want to achieve.
Nice, that's great.
We have another customer here. They're running a business of restaurants, and they have 19 shops. And then they integrate Odoo with and a POS. You mean POS in other software, and they experience like notice in reports. Maybe these kind of questions, you can send us an email. We have the contact information.
That's actually related to what you were mentioning before about scaling the infrastructure to the size, to the scope of the...
Absolutely, and these questions ought to be asked up front because way too often I see people jumping into it's a typical example. Okay, I'm going to be plugging in 50, 100, 200. We had in retail experience right now, we have customers, we are talking about supermarkets. We are talking about thousands of POS systems. They need to understand that this is going to generate billions of lines of transactions on a daily basis. I mean, coming to think of it, you're thinking that you're just buying a coffee in the shop, but every time you buy a coffee, you're buying a service charge. This is without tax. Then you have a tax line, then you have a total line. So next thing you know, you just generated 5 entries in the sales journal just with one coffee. So
that's a good example, actually.
With 90 to 100 stores, and next thing you know is your system can't pedal anything after 3 weeks because you didn't see it coming. Yes, there is large data coming your way indeed.
Okay, so your approach here will be maybe reviewing the infrastructure and the process first, and then you'll be able to see how you can scale the backend to that level of transactions, right?
Yes, absolutely, because At Port Cities, we have a specific process to actually screen these projects because we definitely don't want to end up doing standard implementation of standard Odoo modules with such heavy customers. So it's handled separately. We have an internal division in Port Cities. The name is Port Cities Engineering, and it's exactly what these guys do. I'm one of them. We actually look at the fundamentals and come up with a solution at the design level before we start dabbing with any sort of coding whatsoever.
Okay, great.
Right. How do you achieve supply chain management? Well, we have basically a lot of standard application on that. So just check out our website, that's easy. And another customer audience, we come across many running with Microsoft Navigation. How do we push Odoo to them?
Are you familiar with Microsoft Navision?
Yes, I'm familiar with Navision. I started with Access a long time back. Then I moved to Microsoft Dynamics. I know SQL, Microsoft SQL quite well. I developed actually one library specifically for Microsoft SQL for cross-indexing. So I know these technologies. What I would say is if you are running a large company and you're going to pay a license and you're going to be manipulating large data at some point, do not go Microsoft. Ask yourself the question, Microsoft bought Skype a few years back. Skype used to run on PostgreSQL. After they bought out Skype, Microsoft decided to turn and to change the technology from PostgreSQL to Microsoft SQL. They did it internally with their own technology and their own engineers. They gave up the project after 2 years, and now guess what they're running? Postgre 11. So just to tell you that when it comes to scaling, a great thing about Odoo is they know the technologies that they select. I've been myself in the Postgre community for these past 15 years. And one thing I can tell you is that what comes out of the box when you buy or when you don't buy PostgreSQL is the exact same thing. What I'm trying to say is if you want to buy a PostgreSQL professional version, the only thing that is different from the community edition is that you are buying a ticketing service. The source that you download from the website is the same one. And right now, PostgreSQL with version 12, with horizontal scaling and dynamic partitioning is, from my point of view, becoming the best relational database engine you could ever get. This is probably why everybody's trying to buy it. MariaDB and MySQL were great. That's why Oracle actually bought it. And now everybody wants to buy PostgreSQL because Oracle is actually looking. I've been doing a lot of R&D work. If people are actually interested to see it, I've been doing a lot of comparison with Oracle, with SAP HANA as well. I've been doing comparison with PostgreSQL and Odoo to try and see how much performance and throughput you can get with these systems. And obviously, if you look at the chart and if you look at what you're paying for, there's absolutely no doubt Odoo comes way first. Because at that kind of price, which is PostgreSQL for free, which is paying $0, it's definitely a winner. So
great.
Yes, but back to the Microsoft. If you are going to build something for a large business, obviously I would not recommend to push it beyond a certain point. I like working with Microsoft stuff. I worked with it many years. I still have customers using it, but there are limits to it. It's the size of medium-sized company. Problem is, medium-sized for European or Western business means 20, 30, 50 people. In Asia, medium-sized means 500 people.
Yeah, it's not the same
So
scale.
keep that leverage in mind. It's not the same at all. It's not the same at all. Yes. So there is danger around the bend, obviously, yes. Many customers who implement to Odoo actually are switching from Dynamics. The biggest reason why they want to switch is because of performance issues. When you have an accountant telling you that now to pull a P&L, it takes 20 minutes. When you have people from sales telling you that validating a line for a sales order can be up to 5 seconds a line, then it just becomes intolerable. And then they end up in these situations where the supplier or the service provider will tell them, well, then you need to cut your data. Well, what's the interest if you need to shut down your accounting and your sales every year, if you don't benefit from the client history over the past 5 years, if you don't benefit from the account receivable in the actual position, if you don't benefit from the product turnover over these past years, if you can't actually foresee what is going to happen on this year dashboarding compared with last year, what is the point, right? This is why we integrate. It's the visibility. So doing segmentation because you have performance issue is really a disaster from my point of view. It's somehow saying that at some point the implementation was a failure because it doesn't cope up with the needs.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
That's fair. Okay. Next question will be, what are the typical function customization that Port City do? Like, what's missing with Odoo? I think if that links with localization.
Okay, what are the basically the holes you're trying to fill? Is there anything your customer ask that aren't available on Odoo?
Well, to be honest with you, if you look at the number of modules that our guys actually publish on the GitHub internally, there have been thousands of modules. Indonesian customers and Asian ones in general are being very creative. Plus, sometimes we're only going to build a small customization for a module, but sometimes it's going to be something very big. It's going to be an app standing as itself. Like if you look at the Gojek project, for example, whatever they required from us, 40 to 50% of the system is fully customized. It means that we delivered almost as much code to Gojek than Odoo delivered with the standard Odoo itself, which means the solution we delivered is just as big in terms of features as what Odoo has to offer out of the box. That's how big it can get. Now, we've been involved in many different industries. We've been in retail extensively. We've been in the F&B. We've been in transportation. We've been in energy. We've been in the catering business right now. We have a very large project, including with end customers, actually ordering their meals by online at lunchtime. We've been in very advanced manufacturing. We've been in advanced manufacturing costing, including in jewelry, where you actually melt and combine with where you've got oxidation, evaporation, erosion. So yes, it's complicated stuff. We've been in chemicals with Mitsubishi involved in chemicals as well, where you get very different effects regarding gains and loss, gas transformation. So I can't tell you all but what I can tell you is that there is not 1 week going by where I do not see a PM coming in or sales coming into my office with a new case, a new challenge to pick up, a new industry to cover, and new businesses that actually were born and actually make sense because these people run these businesses, they're making money on a daily basis, they're requiring for ERP, and whatever they did from a business point of view makes sense because the proof is they are making a good living from it. So we always opt to take up the challenge.
That's interesting.
Okay.
Nice.
Next question is, can you share some words about Odoo being integrated with MES?
What is MES?
Manufacturing Execution System.
Oh, okay.
So MES manufacturing, sorry?
Manufacturing Execution System.
Regarding that, I think that we have a few interesting cases which are under NDA, but when I'm looking at this, when you tell me MES, I think about a customer specifically that we had. The way that processes are implemented in Asia specifically are very manual. So whenever we come up into these specific tasks, what I see is that everything is done, everything is neat and tidy, but most of the time everything is on paper. Everything is on paper, and this implies two things. This implies that there is a very complicated cycle of approval that needs to be integrated. Where there is a hierarchy, there are people who actually have to report, they have to check on cycles, they have to check on efficiency, they have many checkpoints. And as they are dealing with a corporate asset, which is basically company machinery, they also have responsibility and they have to report to someone. So very often when we start doing analysis for these systems, people come up to us with sheets of paper where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different signature pads from different people along the hierarchy who have to validate, sign, agree, not agree, quantify, qualify. They have different types of KPIs. And every time we see this, we see that it's neatly built, but there is a great lack of efficiency because it's still a lot of paper being moved around from desk to desk. which is also true for other processes in Asia, such as accounting or other many different things. And the challenge of this is that we need to integrate that within the manufacturing scope, and it's tremendously customized because every time we dive into these projects, we realize one thing is every single industry and every single customer has been doing it in a neat way, but in a completely different way. And their logic, because it works, actually deserves to be followed. Because this is one thing we need to know, is that nobody better than the customer knows their own businesses. So I've been doing SAP implementations before. The technique was to tell them, we are SAP, this is what we do, this is how it must be done, and this is how you're going to do it. The way we work with Odoo is the entire different way. We first approach the customer, we try to understand how they do it. If we see that the way it's being done is neat and tidy, that it's valid and that it can be integrated, then it's our job to just make it happen. So that next thing they know, what they're going to be operating through the Odoo interface actually matches what they used to do manually before, except it's being accelerated by the new technology. It can be an app, it could be a process, it could be an automated task, it could be anything that Odoo has to offer out of the box.
All right.
Great.
Well, that's fair, because in this virus crisis is like an alarm for the traditional business to wake up. It's not the way that things can work in this decade, like in this era. All right. So we come to the last question of the webinar. So what about making Odoo a server less ELP to improve its speed and stability?
I'm not sure I get that question. So I think it's again about scalability of the system. Again, I think
that I can give a very brief answer to try and understand what is at stake here. Is that Odoo itself is not a product manufactured by a principal. Let me explain. If you look at Microsoft, they build the OS, which is Windows. They built a database system, which is Microsoft SQL Server, and then they built Dynamics on top of it. Everything is built by Microsoft. It's being maintained by Microsoft. It's being documented by Microsoft. When you're looking at Odoo, the reason why it picked up so fast, the reason why it's cheaper, and the reason why it's developing so great is because it's based on a lot of third-party applications and technologies which used to exist before. PostgreSQL was not designed by Odoo. Python, as we know it, in 2.7 and version 3 now with the new versions, was not designed, actually was designed by NASA to send shuttles in space. So it's been on and around for many years. XML was not designed by Odoo. HTML to PDF was not designed by Odoo. Nginx, necessary to build a reverse proxy, was not designed by Odoo. So if you look at the technologies one by one, even Workzoid, which actually is the engine used by the Odoo servers, Workzoid actually is not built by Odoo as well. So what you need to understand is the good news is all these technologies that I just mentioned are actually open source, including Linux, meaning you don't need to pay for them. The bad news is it requires a lot more expertise when you start combining them together into something bigger. So when you start talking about high availability, when you start talking about infra scalability, when you talk about generating pooling system, when you talk about PG Bouncer or Piggy Pool 2, when you start talking about Patroni, when you start talking about third-party mechanisms like fail-to-ban for security that requires integration as well, when you start talking about infrastructure, data center knowledge, Microsoft Azure have a different way of virtualizing than GCP would, for example, if you're using Google, which is different again from Amazon. Virtualization is having many consequences on performance as well. These are things that people are not really aware of, that we live on with the databases, that keep changing, that we keep updating. And in a very numerous cases, I've seen examples of IT teams having problems because it was either from the environment or from the technology or from the way they actually designed the solution. It can be so many things combined together that and it keeps moving and the pace is very high. Look at PostgreSQL itself. They have almost 1 new release per year now. Version 12 came up, version 13 next year. You guys at Odoo are launching a version how often? almost every year as well, right?
Every year, yeah.
Every year.
13th year, 14 will be here probably by next year. So you can
October probably, yeah.
moving at a very high pace. If you look at the Linux community, they've been very prolific as well. I mean, look at Debian, look at Ubuntu. It keeps moving on and on. I mean, right now Ubuntu 20 is coming out with the Postgre 12 out of the box. Busy doing R&D with that, seeing that a lot of things have been changing. Things that we were taking for granted are not true anymore. Things have to be changed. The service layers have to be changed. The language, the environment, the Python, everything starts changing. And at the end of the day, we end up in very different spheres, because sometimes a customer comes up to you and it says, okay, I'm using Ubuntu 20, but I'm using Postgre 10. And then in the middle of that, I have Odoo 11. And then I've been using this library of Python. And then suddenly, without knowing it, everything they've been telling you is already generating so many different signals and so many different parameters that making all this work together does require some expertise and experience on the matter, yes.
And you can help them with that.
So infra is very complicated at that level. It's very complicated, yes.
Okay. Great.
That's it for the Q&A session. If you guys have any questions, or you would like to know more about Port City, we have Morgan's contact information on the next slide.
Yeah, so don't hesitate to send me an email or contact me on Skype. If you have any questions, you can also obviously visit Port City's website.
Yeah.
And I could also put you in touch with Denis here. Thank you very much, Denis, for being here today. It was truly a pleasure to host you on this first webinar.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really nice to share with you guys. I guess it was more than an hour, and I didn't see time because every time we're talking about this,
I mean, definitely, I think we cannot.
On and on forever, I guess.
No, I mean,
this is what we do, you know.
Definitely, there is a lot.
Opportunity, really.
Great. Definitely, there is a lot to say, and we can see you have a big expertise to share with everyone. So let's keep. Let's have this conversation then off screen. And thank you very much again for your time. Guys, don't hesitate to come back tomorrow and the day after. We will be hosting a row of webinars this week.
Yeah, we have a whole week of interview with partners, and tomorrow we will have an Australian partner with IT. And make sure you're interested, come back at the same time at 11 a.m. GMT +8. Or subscribe to our channel so you will be notified. And again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Davey. Thank you, Port City, for participating.
Thank you, Denis,
for this webinar.
And stay safe.
Yes, that's the most important things. And
stay home.
Stay home, stay safe for a moment.
All right. Well, we are going to end this webinar here, and see you guys soon tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.